comments, y'all. Come at me. Let's
we're not encouraging
argue.
this.
Yeah, we fight in the comments. Let's go.
We're not encouraging. Hello everyone, I'm Antoine.
And I'm Antoinette.
And we're here just to give a quick review comparison of the original 1992 Candyman and the newest Candyman. This is a quick review, our opinions about it, what we thought about it, and if it's worth seeing.
The original Candyman was made in 1992. There's this woman named Helen. She's married and she is going to school. She and her friend are trying to create a thesis about urban legend. They start off interviewing people about Candyman, which is an urban legend that takes root at Cabrini Green, which is a project. Researching Candyman makes her go to the project. She ends up at this woman's apartment. This woman has a newborn baby named Anthony, and she's really willing to talk to Helen and her friend about what's going on and the legend of Candyman. She's explaining what she heard about the murder, and so Helen is completely enthralled. She eventually decides to summon Candyman, and if you didn't know, don't do it, but if you didn't know, you summon Candyman by saying his name 5 times in a mirror. I'm too scared to do it, y'all, so if you do it and you survive, you let me know how that goes for you, okay? But I'm not about to do that. We see Helen crawling through mirrors,
Doing too much,
Way you know, standard white woman in a horror movie kind of action. Her friend's like, please don't, Helen, but Helen's not listening. Soon Candyman starts stalking her. Candyman hypnotizes her and snatches her away. She wakes up into the home of the woman she met in the project. The baby is missing. She's waking up in a pool of blood. Cops come, immediately arrest Helen. Her husband ends up bailing her out. Helen's friend comes over. The Candyman got Helen hypnotized. She's on the floor like, no, don't kill my friend, la la. Her friend is getting butchered all up by Candyman, and now the cops come again because now it looks like Helen murdered her friend too. So then Helen is locked up in a psych ward. She ends up being there for a couple months. Then her psychiatrist is having a one-on-one interview with her. The psychologist gets murked by Candyman too. Candyman just murking everybody up in here.
Candyman is on site with it.
He jumps out the window. Helen jumps out too. She runs on home. Candyman is telling her that either the baby that he kidnapped is going to be his victim, or Helen is going to be the victim. So it's up to Helen to decide what she wants to do.
She has a major dilemma on her hands.
Yes, so Helen decides that she's going to go back over to Cabrini Project and she's going to rescue the baby. Candyman says that Helen is his love from a past life back in the 1800s. Helen does not remember these past, but the legend of Candyman is that he was the son of a slave. The slave was able to get his freedom. Candyman ended up being a proficient artist and would tour around painting portraits of really prominent people. He ends up painting the portrait of the daughter of a wealthy man in the area. The daughter and him have an affair. The daughter ends up pregnant, tells her father, and they drag him, cut off his arm, have bumblebees after him, and he dies a torturous death. Yeah. Candyman's like, you, Helen, are the woman from my past life, my love. Helen does not remember any of this. Helen runs off because she hears the baby crying in this junk pile that the people in the neighborhood are going to burn. Helen comes rushing into the bonfire. She's looking for the baby. She finds the baby. Candyman grabs her. She's able to get away from Candyman. She grabs the baby and is able to crawl out of the fire, give the baby back to his mother. Helen dies.
That's the end of the movie. The 2021 installment of Candyman is essentially about a visual artist whose name is Anthony. He has a group of friends and they're in gentrified areas of Chicago. He's a struggling artist. Him and everybody he collaborates with are trying to construct this groundbreaking art project for him and his career, and he's in a relationship with his girlfriend. They're making a journey. He starts to learn about the story of Candyman. He meets this guy at a laundromat who gives him more details about the story of Candyman, who Candyman was, and gave him all the details about the urban legend and things of that sort. So Anthony's like taking on these ideas and he decides to incorporate this in his art project. He thought it'd be a good idea because I guess he had the artist version of writer's block, and he didn't really know what he's going to paint, what type of visuals he's going to put together for his project. So he decided that Candyman was going to be the theme around his art project. The more he started to learn about Candyman, the more he started to paint about it. He started to become obsessed with the story of Candyman. Each time he would visit a laundromat, the laundromat guy would tell him more about Candyman. So he actually did what Helen did essentially. He became so fascinated with the story, he actually visited the project and tried to get like a background of who Candyman was. It kind of gave him a little guidance towards his project. And so when he did that, he gets stung by a bee. He gets an infection in his hand, and infection just starts to grow rapidly throughout his arm and everything like that. He ends up damn near getting sepsis and has to go to the hospital. Me and my girlfriend was saying he needs like an overdose or antibiotics. So that infection was nasty. So he does the project, but then a lot of weird things start happening. A lot of deaths start occurring. Some of his close friends, some of his art colleagues they got slaughtered. So he's trying to make sense of all this stuff, and he puts two and two together, and he's like, maybe this urban legend is real. He ends up talking to his mom, and his mom actually tells him that he is the baby from the original Candyman that Helen tried to save. He's like mind blown, and who wouldn't be if they found out, you know, they were actually involved in that story. That happens, and then he starts to become Candyman. It's almost like he took on an oath indirectly. He starts to make this transformation into Candyman slowly. But the laundromat owner accelerated their transformation for him. His body becomes almost like in a possessed state, and he's like there. He takes him to the church. He kidnaps him, brings him to the church, chops off his hand, inserts the hook in his hand, and so he could essentially become Candyman. His girlfriend ends up there. The laundromat guy kidnaps her. She gets caught in all this chaos. Yeah, she calls the cops, and then once he calls the cops, all hell breaks loose. The laundromat guy tries to kill her as well. They run her throughout the building. She's trying to get away from him. She ends up going outside, so she ends up killing the laundromat guy. Stabs him in the face several times with a pin. He dies. She meets up with Anthony again, who's the new Candyman. He's really weak because, like, essentially lost a lot of blood. He got his hand chopped off, so she's holding him in her arms and she's talking to him. And the cops just come in. The cops end up killing Anthony. Of course, she's distraught. Gets arrested. The cops come out everywhere. So then they put her in the police vehicle. They're about to take her off. The cop is acting really weird. They ask her the questions about Candyman. She's like, I give you all the details about this crime scene if you just let me look in the mirror and say Candyman. The cop, maybe he's not from the hood and he don't really know who Candyman is, so he presumes to let her do that. And she looks in the rearview mirror and says Candyman, and it essentially that reincarnates Anthony, who's the new Candyman, and he comes out and just slaughters all the cops and slaughters everybody. Then there's a segment at the very end of the movie where the original Candyman appears, and he's just telling her to tell everything, like keep my story alive, essentially. That's the synopsis of what happened in the movie.
So now you guys got an idea of like what both movies were about. We're just gonna talk about some of the themes and some of the social messages that came along with the movie.
The 2020 adaptation of Candyman I think it was more of a psychological thriller. I felt like the first part was just a standard horror movies, like a big scary guy slaughtering everybody. Psychological elements, a few here and there, but overall it was just a typical horror movie for the most part, in my opinion. It was more psychological with this one. I mean, Candyman, it was because the fear aspect, saying his name. Most horror movies are psychological as well. Fear is a psychological thing. Of course, it was like some socioeconomic themes, especially in the sequel and the first part.
The haves and the have-nots. One of my favorite subtle cues of that in the first movie. Helen is sitting at dinner with all of her all-white colleagues, and they're just talking about, oh, this urban legend while I sip my wine and smoke my cigarettes. Everybody in the movie was a chain smoker in the first one. I was just like, Jesus.
Yeah, including Helen too.
Yeah, this whole cast is gonna end up with water in their lungs.
Listen, you're running from Candyman. Your lung capacity gotta be good. You gotta run.
The way that the director did it in the first one is brilliant. You see her at Cabrini Green Projects talking to the lady, and then cut immediately to this table after Candyman's kind of like whispering in her ear. You're at this table, so you see a very clear example of people living in the projects in poverty, struggling with survival even, to people who have an abundance of wealth, to the point where they can talk at such a distance about the issues that face these same people every single day.
They're speaking from a space of safety. When they're like outsiders kind of looking in. Candyman, the first themes I got from it is exposure. Helen, she was like a well-to-do college student. She actually got exposure to like how people lived and the things that they went through in those projects and in those neighborhoods. So it was actually not only she educated herself about Candyman, but through that journey she kind of learned about the inequities that people go through in those type of neighborhoods and challenges they face. I think that was something, you know, people could take on and understand. And I felt like in the 2021 installment, Candyman was almost metaphorical to me as well. If you notice in the movie, there was like several Candymans in the movie that they mentioned. To me, like Candyman represented the constant reoccurring struggle that people in those socially disadvantaged neighborhoods had to go through.
Not just socially disadvantaged, but black people as a whole.
Yes.
The very first Candyman, he was a prominent artist, and that he was able to be even in white spaces. I think that was also one of the reoccurring messages, this idea of gentrification. What does it mean to be a black person in white spaces? In the second one, because Anthony is an artist, he's having his work looked at the showcase. He ends up talking to this art critic, and she basically says that his art is mundane and is just showcasing violence. Even though this is an art project about the socio-economic issues, the impact of gentrification, and the brutality of being a black person with that history in America, she, from a space of privilege, is able to look down on his message. It brings up the question of who is the right person to critique your message.
Right.
One of the things I really loved about Candyman, especially in the sequel, was the act of looking into the mirror, which is a very narcissistic kind of thing to do in the first place. You are now choosing to summon this being, which will then pass judgment on you and kill you. There are so many really beautifully artistic moments where you can see Candyman in mirrors, but you can't see him in reality. He's there, but he's not there at the same time.
That was a reoccurring scene in the movies, like the thing with the mirrors, more so than the first one. It's actually a scene where Anthony gets in an elevator, and he's surrounded by mirrors, and then Candyman appears, and it got to the point where he started to see Candyman in himself. So he's essentially becoming Candyman. So that presents the idea that when people look at a mirror, they see a reflection of their fear that people hide and things like that. There's many different ways you could look at the movie. It seemed like Candyman was a generational thing. Every generation had its own Candyman.
Candyman is, I would assume, black male rage.
Yeah.
About the injustices that black men in America historically have experienced, because each Candyman
had their own fair share of injustices, but ultimately led to their death. So we're just going to give a quick overview about what we thought about the movie, and also share with you guys our opinion about which Candyman is better, 1992 installment versus the current Candyman. In my honest opinion, I just think it's always hard to top a classic.
Absolutely.
Nostalgia always wins, so I feel like the first one is better. And even outside of that, I feel like the cinematography of the first one was really good. I liked the way it was shot, and it just had that classic horror element to it.
Absolutely.
You know, when you watch the first one, it's feeling in your bones. You could feel like the eerie moments that they had in the movie. They did a really good job of capturing that. I genuinely felt creeps when I watched the first one, especially the first time seeing it. You know, I've seen the movie about maybe 3 or 4 times, but I genuinely connected with that. I felt like they did a really good job overall, and I thought the first one was actually more scary than the 2021 installment of the movie. How they managed to capture all those horror aspects. That's just my honest opinion. So I think nostalgia wins. It's hard to top a classic, so I'm going with the first one in terms of like which one is better.
I feel the exact opposite way. There were so many things about the first one that I hated. I'm a horror movie buff, but I'm also a very tough critic when it comes down to movies, and the first one to me was very obnoxious. I felt like the time was too slow. Everything moved at like a snail's pace. I remember at one point this one texted me and he's like, oh yeah, I'm done with the movie, and I'm only like 30 minutes in and I'm like, I'm struggling here.
Yeah, because we watched the movie again just to, you know, refresh ourselves on what happened in movies we'd have watched since we've seen it, and she was just outraged almost. I'm like, listen man, this is a classic movie, but
it doesn't matter if it's a classic.
Yeah.
It does not matter. There's plenty of classics that aren't great movies. My biggest issue with the first one is the way that time moves. The first killing is about a couple who's about to get it in. They say Candyman in the mirror 5 times and immediately are slaughtered. However, Helen says Candyman in the mirror 5 times and is able to live for like 2-3 months before anything remotely creepy happens to her.
Well,
so
Candyman had to think about it, man.
No. If you're gonna have an urban legend, if you're gonna make these rules, I expect that you stick to those rules.
The rules apply to everybody.
Yes. Even if she's the love of your life, show yourself at least. And I also thought the acting was really bad in the first one too. It drove me crazy. There were so many moments when the psychiatrist dies in the first one. He's literally on the table. I'm like, who told you how to die?
So we thinking he dead, and then Candyman jabs him again. He's like, oh,
yeah.
So you died twice. You got killed twice. I don't know. You know?
The things that happened, I feel like there was a lot of lack of commitment in some of like the choices that people made. I feel like the only thing they committed to was chain smoking. I prefer the 2021 version of Candyman. I think it was shot beautifully. I think the characters are interesting. The thing is, I did not find Helen likable in the first one. There was nothing about her that made me be like, wow, I'm really rooting for this girl to survive. And I didn't like Anthony either. The reason I didn't like Anthony was because he was selfish.
I was gonna say he was. He did give that vibe to me.
Yes, because he was so selfish, I at least felt something for him. He was unlikable. Where Helen, I was like, I could leave her, I could take her.
In my honest opinion, I thought the first one was more scary than the 2021 adaptation of the film. The way it was shot, it takes place in the projects. It was loosely mentioned in the 2021 version, and the original movie mostly shot inside the projects. I think it made it more scary. You saw those images of Candyman throughout the projects, the building looking bandaged. It captured like a more of an eerie, creepy feeling. To me, that's what gauges a horror film, if it's scary or not. And the first was like more graphic too. Like the violence, it was like more graphic, and you see like.
In the first one?
The first one's more graphic.
You think okay.
Way more graphic. In the 2021 version, when they would get slaughtered, the camera would turn away and you won't actually see what's happening and how Candyman is killing these people. But the original film, there were moments like that too. It's like, what comes to mind to me is the scene where they're detailing a story about the kid who had like a mental problem. He's in the store, he's waiting for his mom, and then he goes across the street and Candyman slaughters him, and he's on the ground like crying, like mommy, mommy. Like,
yeah, but you don't see anything.
But you can see him bleeding and stuff like that, you know.
There is a moment in the second one, if we're gonna talk about gore, Shawty's neck gets slashed open and you can literally see, well, we have better technology now. You see the slit in her throat.
Oozing out.
Yes, and the way the art critic lady died, where literally we are taken back and we have a view from across the street from her apartment. You see her lifted up and her head basically smashed up against the window, and I feel like
blood trail.
Yeah, all of the killings in the second one are far more graphic.
Well, it looks like we have a difference of opinion,
and that's okay.
But that's our review. That's our synopsis of both films. Our honest opinions about it. So, you know, feel free to share your experiences with the movie, what you guys thought about it. We'll see you guys in the next video.
Yes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all.